Liam Harrison was an architect, a man who believed in the integrity of the foundation. He specialized in designing community centers, structures built not on glitz, but on practical, enduring strength. This philosophy mirrored his personal life, quiet, steady, and focused on building a solid future with his wife, Claire. Claire was a high-powered marketing executive, her life a constant, polished performance of ambition. She loved Liam's steadiness, initially finding his quiet strength a perfect counterpoint to her chaotic professional life. But for 5 years, their primary focus had been a constant, exhausting battle against silence, infertility. Their diagnosis was difficult. Low sperm motility, a subtle but significant factor on Liam's side. It was treatable, but the label, male factor infertility, felt like a brand of failure Liam could never quite erase. Claire, however, used the diagnosis as fuel for her public narrative, the strong woman enduring hardship. They turned to IVF. The process was agonizing, turning their intimacy into a series of clinical appointments and calculated injections. But finally, on the 3rd cycle, they conceived. The moment the doctor confirmed the heartbeat, Liam felt an overwhelming surge of vindication. He wasn't weak, he was a father. Their daughter, Elara, was born 2 years later. She was perfect, a tiny, powerful embodiment of their perseverance. For a brief time, Elara was the perfect keystone in their fragile marriage. The harmony was short-lived. Parenthood did not soften Claire. It merely provided a new benchmark for her performance. She meticulously documented Elara's milestones on social media, creating an image of the effortlessly perfect modern family. Liam noticed the distance first. Claire's empathy, always rationed, seemed to evaporate entirely. She became hypercritical of his parenting style, his insistence on quiet time, his patient explanations of shadows and light, his focus on Elara's inner curiosity. She needs structured stimulation. Liam, not philosophical chats about the color spectrum, Claire snapped one evening, after finding Liam teaching Elara how to mix blue and yellow. I need her to be competitive. The true disintegration began when Claire was promoted. Her new project involved a dynamic, aggressive tech entrepreneur named Marcus Thorne, a man whose entire existence was a loud, unmissable statement of success. Marcus was everything Liam was not: loud, financially dominant, and outwardly alpha. Liam tried to talk to Claire to bridge the growing chasm. We built this family on persistence, Claire, on defying the odds. Don't let the noise of your career drown out the truth of what we have. Claire's response was cold and clinical. The truth, Liam. The truth is that I had to fight tooth and nail for every single cell that makes up that child. I went through the pain, the injections, the emotional hell. You contributed a sample. You are part of the foundation, yes, but you are not the primary investor in this future. The financial metaphor was a direct, calculated cruelty. Liam knew then that the integrity of their foundation had failed. The affair with Marcus became undeniable, not through passion, but through paperwork. Claire filed for divorce, and the petition was brutal, demanding sole custody and a highly restricted visitation schedule. Claire's legal strategy, masterminded by Marcus and her high-powered legal team, was a masterpiece of emotional and scientific manipulation. They didn't just cite Liam's lower income, they leveraged his infertility diagnosis. Their legal brief implied that Liam's genetic contribution to Elara was flawed from the start, necessitating expensive and painful medical intervention. They argued he was the genetically weak partner who had failed to provide the most basic biological gift, necessitating a technologically engineered solution. Marcus, meanwhile, was presented as the paradigm of health and financial strength, the ideal provider for Elara's future. Mr. Harrison's emotional capacity is not in doubt, Claire's lawyer stated in an initial filing, a statement dripping with condescension. But in a modern custody dispute, we must consider the viability of the child's lineage. We argue that the parent whose genetic line required technological bypass is less equipped to ensure the child's continued biological and material excellence. The accusation was a psychological weapon. It wasn't just about cheating. It was about invalidating his fatherhood at the most fundamental level. Liam, the architect who built things to last, felt his entire foundation crumbling into dust. Liam moved into a sparse, temporary apartment. The silence was deafening, amplified by the absence of Elara, whom he was only allowed to see during highly supervised, brief visits. He was consumed by two things: grief and rage. But his rage wasn't aimed at Claire. It was aimed at the injustice of the lie that had been weaponized against him. He was an architect, and architects understood systems. The only way to defeat Claire's scientific narrative was with better science. Liam, who had loved genetics as a hobby in college, turned his grief into a disciplined, obsessive focus. He took a leave of absence from his work and sold off his minor assets, converting his life savings into a personal, high-powered laboratory of data. A stack of genetic textbooks, a high-resolution microscope, and access to massive scientific databases. He started with the IVF records, the raw genetic sequencing data they were provided years ago. He had to prove his contribution was not a failure, but a foundation. He found a mentor in Dr. Anya Sharma, a brilliant, ethical geneticist at a university research lab. Liam approached her not as a client, but as a student, asking her to validate his self-study. "Most men in your position hire a lawyer to discredit the data," Dr. Sharma noted, looking at Liam's meticulously organized research notes. "You've hired yourself a PhD program. I have to prove I belong to my daughter, doctor. Not with emotion, but with truth. I need to understand the building blocks of her life better than the woman who is trying to sell her future." Dr. Sharma, intrigued by Liam's architectural approach to data analysis, seeing patterns where specialists saw noise, agreed to guide him. Liam spent months drowning in the data, cross-referencing his own sequence with Claire's and Elara's. He was searching for the subtle strengths, the compensatory genes that defied the initial motility diagnosis. He found traces of resilience, complex regulatory sequences, but nothing conclusive to defeat Claire's claims of genetic deficiency. Then, he found the glitch. It was a tiny, recessive allelic variant, a single nucleotide polymorphism, SNP, that he traced back to his own lineage. It was so rare it wasn't listed on standard clinical panels. Liam dubbed it the shadow marker. Dr. Sharma was initially skeptical. "Liam, this is highly unusual. It's a recessive marker associated with a specific, obscure enzymatic deficiency, a metabolic disorder called atypical glucokinase deficiency, AGKD. It only manifests when two specific genetic and environmental triggers align. It's benign 99.9% of the time." AGKD was a condition that, if activated, resulted in a severe, sudden inability to process certain simple sugars, leading to rapid neurometabolic collapse. It was a condition that required immediate, specialized dietary restriction and supplemental dosing to manage, knowledge that was so niche. It existed only in specialized research journals. Liam cross-referenced his shadow marker with Elara's sequence. Hypothesis 1, Claire was negative for the marker. Hypothesis 2, Elara, inheriting the recessive marker from Liam, was a carrier. If Elara was a carrier, she was safe. But Liam ran the full panel, agonizing over the results. The data returned. Elara was not merely a carrier. Due to a highly improbable and unique combination of his and Claire's genetic material, a genetic fluke independent of the IVF process, Elara was homozygous recessive. She carried the active, though dormant, AGKD condition. The perfect IVF child carried a ticking biological time bomb. The gravity of the discovery was crushing. Liam wasn't just fighting a custody battle. He was fighting a genetic clock. Elara was asymptomatic now, but AGKD could be triggered by exposure to specific environmental stressors or dietary changes that Claire, in her pursuit of the competitive lifestyle, might unknowingly implement. Liam brought the data to Dr. Sharma. Her skepticism vanished, replaced by cold dread. "Liam, this changes everything," she whispered, looking at the complex SNP data. "If this is accurate, Elara is at risk. She needs a highly specific, low-fructose, high-supplement regimen immediately. If she's exposed to high levels of, say, sucrose or high-fructose corn syrup, common in the competitive snacks Claire probably feeds her, it could be catastrophic." Liam realized the profound, terrible irony. The flawed gene he carried was now the key to saving his daughter. He had the knowledge, but he had no access. Claire had custody and was actively feeding Elara the life that could kill her. Liam decided to stop fighting Claire on her terms, on the basis of finance, image, or emotional capacity. He would fight her on the basis of truth and life. He immediately moved to file an emergency motion for a medical review, presenting the preliminary genetic findings to the judge. Claire and her lawyer dismissed it as a desperate, amateur attempt to delay the hearing. The final custody hearing was set. Claire arrived looking immaculate, accompanied by Marcus, who sat like a solid pillar of financial stability. They had arranged for a high-profile child psychologist to testify that Liam's obsessive focus on unproven genetic theories was emotionally damaging to Elara. Claire took the stand, weeping delicately. She spoke of the years of IVF pain, the burden of being the primary contributor to Elara's life, and her dedication to providing Elara with a future defined by excellence. "Liam is a good man, Your Honor," she said, her voice shaking just enough to sound genuine. "But he is lost in his grief. He has become obsessed with arcane theories and genetic flaws that simply do not exist. He needs to move past his own biological failures and allow Elara to thrive." The lawyer hammered the point home. Mr. Harrison's own medical history shows his inability to provide the most fundamental element of fatherhood. His recent, bizarre foray into amateur genetic research is just another manifestation of his inability to accept the reality of his diminished role. Liam was scheduled to take the stand after lunch. He knew he couldn't just present the data, he needed a demonstration. During the lunch recess, disaster struck. Liam's phone buzzed with an urgent call from a social worker. "Mr. Harrison, Elara is at the courthouse." The social worker's voice was panicked. "She was brought here for a scheduled interview. Her mother gave her a juice box and an energy bar, competitive fuel," she called it. "Elara is convulsing. The paramedics are here, but they don't know what it is." Liam sprinted through the courthouse halls. When he reached the waiting room, Elara was pale, her small body shaking violently. Claire was hysterical, screaming for a diagnosis, while the bewildered paramedics administered standard IV fluids. Liam fought his way past the security. "Stop the glucose drip. She has atypical glucokinase deficiency. She cannot process the sugar. You are killing her." The paramedics looked at the clean-cut architect, then back at the frantic, highly visible mother and hesitated. "Who are you? Are you a doctor?" the head paramedic demanded. "I am her father," Liam roared, pulling out the laminated, color-coded medical emergency card he had prepared weeks ago, based on his own research. "Look at the supplement profile. She needs a D-ribose IV and an immediate enzyme buffer. It's a metabolic crisis. She needs a specific, rare intervention." Claire was screaming. "He's making it up. He's crazy. Don't listen to him." Liam ignored her. He forced his eyes to lock with Dr. Sharma, who had just rushed into the hallway, alerted by Liam's frantic pretrial texts. "Dr. Sharma, the SNP data. Tell them," Dr. Sharma, seeing the child's severe neurometabolic distress, needed no further proof. She grabbed the paramedic's arm. "He is correct. I am a geneticist. The child has a documented recessive metabolic disorder. If you administer glucose, you risk irreversible brain damage. Follow the protocol on his card now." The paramedics, recognizing Dr. Sharma's professional status and seeing the clear, coded data on Liam's card, acted immediately, halting the standard drip and switching to the specified enzyme buffer and sugar substitute solution. Within minutes, Elara's convulsions eased. The room held its breath. Liam, kneeling on the cold marble floor, held his daughter until her tiny hand squeezed his finger. He had saved her life with his knowledge. The court resumed in stunned silence. The events of the recess had been witnessed by bailiffs, lawyers, and the judge himself, who had discreetly followed the chaos. Liam took the stand, not as a desperate man, but as a man who had faced the ultimate test and prevailed. Dr. Sharma testified first, providing the scientific validation. "Mr. Harrison's research was meticulous, proactive, and life-saving, Your Honor," Dr. Sharma stated firmly. He identified a highly obscure recessive condition that evaded standard clinical testing. He mastered its management protocol in a matter of months. His knowledge saved this child from certain neurological damage, possibly death. His competence as a guardian is not debatable. It is proven by immediate, irrefutable medical necessity. When Claire's lawyer attempted to cross-examine, arguing Liam was still practicing amateur science, Dr. Sharma shut him down. Mr. Harrison's science was accurate. His ex-wife's competitive fuel was poison. Which parent proved their competency? Finally, Liam addressed the court. He didn't speak of the cheating or the betrayal. He spoke of the foundation. Your Honor, I was told I was weak because my genetics required technology. I was told my love was less valid because it was quiet. Claire provided a sample and then moved on to the performance. I provided a sample, and when I discovered it carried a risk, I devoted my entire life to mastering that risk. He held up a copy of Elara's genetic sequence. My flaw is now her greatest vulnerability, and my commitment to understanding that flaw is now her greatest shield. My contribution to her life is not measured by the cell I gave, but by the relentless knowledge I acquired to protect the life that cell created. Claire provides the public image. I provide the surgical truth. The courtroom waited for the final ruling. The judge, an experienced jurist known for his pragmatic approach, delivered a verdict that stunned the legal community. He granted Liam full physical custody and imposed strict supervision requirements on Claire's access. The judge's closing statement was the ultimate vindication. The evidence presented today goes far beyond standard assessments of income or emotional stability. This case presents a profound question regarding the nature of parental dedication in the modern age. The court finds that Miss Harrison demonstrated a profound failure of observation and ethical responsibility, prioritizing the performance of a perfect life over the intimate, scientific truth of her child's reality. She used the language of genetic weakness to attack the petitioner, while simultaneously engaging in behavior that put the child's life in immediate, extreme danger. Mr. Harrison, in contrast, transformed his pain of rejection into a disciplined, life-saving devotion to knowledge. He did not merely accept the diagnosis of his own past. He embraced the difficult, hidden genetic truth of his daughter. He acquired specialized expertise not for profit or ego, but for the exclusive purpose of protection. The court must cite Mr. Harrison's willingness to embrace and understand the difficult genetic truth as the highest form of parental dedication. In this family, competency is defined by the depth of knowledge and the willingness to sacrifice one's own career and comfort for the child's fundamental safety. Mr. Harrison has proven, through irrefutable medical action, that he is the uniquely qualified guardian. Custody is awarded to the petitioner, Liam Harrison. Liam returned to his life, not as a divorcee burdened by failure, but as a man defined by a profound, unique success. He finished his leave of absence and returned to architecture, but his focus had shifted. He began working on specialized community centers dedicated to supporting families managing rare, undiagnosed medical conditions, structures that were built around the quiet integrity of data and empathy. Elara thrived under his careful, loving care and her specialized diet. Her condition was manageable, her life full and vibrant. Claire faded into the noise she loved. Marcus left her shortly after the scandal, citing the PR disaster as a loss of competitive advantage. Claire's public image, once her greatest asset, became her prison, forever tied to the image of the woman who nearly poisoned her own child. Years later, Liam watched Elara mixing paints in their kitchen. She was painting a complex pattern, a blend of light and shadow. "Daddy," Elara asked, holding up her brush, "what is the strongest part of a building?" Liam smiled, his eyes holding the quiet certainty of deep water. "It's not the steel, Elara. It's the knowledge of the ground you build on. It's the truth you refuse to cover up." He had been told his contribution was insignificant, genetically weak, and technologically supplanted. He had proven that the most profound parental contribution is not the quality of the genes you provide, but the dedication you show to the life those genes create. The IVF lie was dead. The genetic truth had set them free.